Greetings, ladies and laddies, and welcome back to the realms of a cursed city. In this episode, we're gonna start off with the zombie horde, already built and primed in the last episode. Now, I'm really curious about how this is gonna go, as I'm not exactly known for being a fast painter. I usually spend around 8 to 10 hours on a single mini, regardless of its worth on the tabletop, and especially with these very detailed and intricately modeled minis, I reckon I'd usually need between 7 to 10 days at least. But now, I only have one. Still aiming for the same high quality standard. So, we better jump right in. I will be painting all 10 models in one go. But in contrast to me, you might want to keep your sanity, which is why I recommend painting them in batches of 5. Starting with the clothing, I think I'll actually go for quite some vibrant colors, fighting the stereotype of medieval clothing being all brown and beige. I will most of the time not go into much detail in terms of the names and brands of the paints I'm using, only speaking for example of red instead of Citadel's Mephiston Red. Nevertheless, I will have a guide in the description of the video with the exact colors written down. A tip when applying the colors: the dirtier you want the cloth to look in the end, the more thinned down the paint should be. This leaves more room to play for the later wash, resulting in more visible stains. Be quick and even messy, as there is nothing to look out for yet. I also gave one of the zombie-nesses a white dress, because I thought it would pose an interesting twist. I used Citadel's Apothecary White for this, as this really is the fastest way to paint white cloth. It leaves no stains and doesn't desaturate the white underneath, like a black wash would do, for example. Alright, now we can move on to the zombie's flesh. I just go for plain skin colors, as I think that painting zombies green is kinda odd. Whatever you pick, make sure to not pick a too saturated color, but rather use a quite pale tone. If need be, mix a drop or two of white into it. If you want to, you can even fill out some of the clothing's holes with skin color where it makes sense, but you really don't have to. After the first base coat, I picked an even brighter beige or brown, and carefully dry brushed the raised parts like ankles, hands and the faces. To really make the skin look dead and bloodless, I applied an even brighter highlight by dry brushing a light grey over the same areas as before. I know what you must be thinking, and yes, it looks very bright now, but trust me, we're on the right path. The dry brush, especially the very messy one I do here, is gonna make the skin all rough and uneven, but that's alright. If anything, it just adds to the immersion of the minis being long dead corpses. A really nice feature on these new zombie models are their tombstones. You should check first what materials they resemble before you get your brush to work, as some are made out of wood and others are made from stone or even metal. For the stone tombstones, we start off with a quite dark grey tone. Be sure to apply the paint in 2 thin coats, because many fine details like the delicate letters could very easily get clogged up. After the paint is dry, we dry brush it with a lighter grey, giving it some nice texture and easy accentuation. For the planks and wooden tombstones, we take a nice vibrant brown color, since this was once a living organism after all. Alright, after that we take a lighter brown and lightly dry brush it for some more interesting texture. I painted the roots and underside of the wooden stakes in a darker, colder brown color, to really make them look like they were formerly buried underground. You can paint the metallic fences however you like. I used a slightly thinned down version of the same grey as I did for the stone, as I feared any true metallic metal's reflection would be too bright in the end. I also used this dark grey for the piles of earth around the tombstones. After the tombstones, I turned my attention to the hair of the zombies. I used grey for most of them, just not for the lady in the white dress, as she has a lot of grey and white on her already. For the flowers, you can also basically do whatever you fancy. I painted mine like classic roses, using a darkish red. The leaves and blades of grass got painted in a quite desaturated green. I wanted them to look alive, just not too healthy. Speaking about not being healthy, I painted the bare skulls on the zombies' backs in a light beige color, the same color I'll also use for the scrolls and papers. Moving on to a brighter color, I used white for the many candles dotted around the minis. Be careful to not touch any of the surroundings and rather leave a slight gap to the tombstone. Next we get our true metallic metals out. I painted the locks and handcuffs in a dark steel color. For the belts and jewelry I used gold, and for the wooden tombstones with the metallic ornaments I used a dark copper or bronze color. The animals like the rats and birds got painted in a blue tinted dark grey. While doing this, I intentionally thinned the paint with a lot of water so it would seek out the recesses more and leave plenty of white edges to keep all of the nicely casted details still showing. Now we just need to quickly take care of the belts on some of the zombies, and we are done with all of the base colors. There's just one last step we have to do. Get your washes out and heavily slop them on your minis. Usually I'd say less is more, but hence we want the zombies to look all dark and dirty, more is actually more. If you find your washes indeed building up too much, just keep brushing till it's all spread out to your liking. What a great feeling getting all these models done. The only thing you should try to avoid are the white candles and the paper scrolls, as those should only be lightly washed. I also used a red tinted wash for the roses and the red dress, but you don't have to. While we leave the models to dry, we can turn our attention to the bases. I used Citadel's texture paint, Sterling Mud, which is essentially a very thick brown color with grains of sand mixed in, to lay the foundation and hide any last gaps and lines from the connection bar. To make the earth itself look more interesting, I randomly dabbed and dry brushed 3 lighter colors of brown onto the base. After that, I painted our cobblestones with a medium dark grey, and finished it up by painting the trims in a smooth pitch black. And this is it. All zombies are fully painted up. Wait. What? Right. I took one zombie out and painted it while having a timer running. I did this one separately, without having to worry about filming it, as I wanted to test how much hands-on painting time all of these steps really take. I went as fast and efficient as I possibly could, which was a lot of fun and a great change to my usual really slow approach. Anyway, the model took me just short of an hour to paint, which might not seem like a real speed paint, but is absolutely blazing fast for me, especially considering the level of detail this model features. And there you have it! 10 fully painted zombies, which can be done in a single weekend worth of work with only a handful of steps to follow. I'm actually quite excited about this result, as every single model turned out really nice, despite only taking 1/10 of the time I usually would have needed. Still, the models have quite a bit of unscraped potential in them, and in the next few minutes I'd like to show you a few optional steps to further upgrade these already awesome looking zombies. Alright, starting off with some extra definition in your models, we highlight the folds of the clothes and dresses. Oftentimes you can use the same color as for the base, but if that's too subtle, take a pale tone close to the original color, like beige for yellow clothes for example. Just be careful to not overdo this step to keep the paint job's integrity. Staying with the clothes, you can very easily get a cool stained dirt effect with just a little bit of wash. Think about the area you want dirty, and then apply more and more layers of wash, always moving a little bit further down the cloth, leaving a bit of the previous color untouched. Give the wash enough time to dry before applying the next layer, as you will otherwise tear up the formerly painted layers. Another cool, and far less time consuming addition for more realism, is to very lightly wash the skin on places like the ankles and joints with a red tinted wash. This will make the impression of some last blood reservoirs showing through a threadbare skin. Putting our brown paints to good use, let's turn our attention to the wooden stakes. I put various brown paints on the tips on the underside of the stakes, aiming for a realistic looking effect of carved wood. I always left some of the previous brown showing, painting the color in fine streaks, getting increasingly brighter as I moved to the very tip. The weird thing in the bird's beak is actually the man's underneath ripped out eye. Painting this is actually very easy. Just use a very thinned down red and lightly dab it on the nerve ending, and a very thinned down beige for the eyeball itself. As the last few steps, I used the technical paint Nihilak Oxide and sparingly applied it on the copper ornament on some of the tombstones. And to provide a little bit more storytelling, I carefully highlighted the letters on the zombie's back, and then painted very fine black lines like handwriting onto it, finishing it up with a red dot as a wax seal. Oh dearie me, painting 10 models in 2 days really is a slog, even with speed painting. The model's beautiful design and masterful cast just have so much lovely details to keep you occupied that it really just takes some time to paint them. But don't feel intimidated by this in any way, as it can be a whole lot of fun painting all the little things that are going on with these minis. Straighten your back, pick up your brushes, and paint like the proud hobbyist you are. I really hope you enjoyed following me along on these minis, and maybe even picked up a thing or two to help you with your own models at home. If you have any questions, maybe a couple of suggestions, be my guest and share them in the comment section. In the next video, I will continue with the graveyard personnel, painting Torgilius the Chamberlain. If you'd like to see his speed paint, feel free to hit the subscribe button, as I hope very much to see you again in my next video. Until then, take care. But now, I only have one. Still aiming for the same high quality standard. If you have any questions, maybe a couple of suggestions, be my guest and share them in the comment section. Be my guest and share them in the comment. Be my guest. Be my guest.